So hello,
Hello.
real pleasure. So is everybody, do we know for sure that everybody's good to go up there?
Yeah, they can
Okay.
hear us.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, just let me know and we'll put your presentation up.
All right, so let me just do a couple quick introductions here first. Obviously, I'm Jim Price. My wife, Joan, right here in the pink blouse, we've been married for 47 years, and she's, worked through a lot of interesting projects with me together, and this Caboose is certainly one of the most interesting. Joan's sister, Jackie, is right back there with her husband, Mark. They're from Ramona, and they spent a lot of time with us in Goldfield working on the Caboose too. Bud and Tina right over here. Bud was my college roommate in 1965 at UC Santa Barbara, so we have a lot of history. Pat and Marianne here are our neighbors, and they've been to Goldfield. Bud and Tina have not only been to Goldfield, Bud painted a real nice painting of the Caboose when it hadn't been painted yet, so it looks kind of rough, and he prefers that, but now we're done with that part. Chris Ray is here. Chris is a pretty significant local author here, particularly local highways and backcountry stuff here. He's written a number of books, and he and I are working together right now on a little Highway 80 project. There's quite a few people here from the San Diego Electric Railway Association, of which I'm a member and a board member. There's several in the audience and several on the Zoom. And then some of these other folks here, some names here like Armin and Rhea and Bud and others are friends of ours that zoomed in here tonight that are either here in San Diego or other parts of the country. So anyway, let's do this. This has been a very interesting project, and I appreciate I know this is kind of off topic for San Diego, but okay. So we have given this talk in Goldfield at Goldfield Days last year, and also at the Nevada State Railroad Museum last August it was, last August. And then I recorded this and put a recording of it on YouTube. I'd never done that before from home, but one of my ham radio friends told us how to do that. So and it's okay. I mean, the content's fine. I don't look that great in it, but I go over to share screen right away, so you don't have to look at me very much. Okay, so this is about restoring Nevada Copper Belt Railroad Caboose number 2. And I know that sounds on the face of it a little strange, because on the other, well, for openers, what the heck was Nevada Copper Belt? But here we go. Let's see, where do I need to point, Steve?
The black case over by the door is where the receiver is.
Okay.
Try the down button.
Yeah, I'm doing the down button. It was working a minute ago.
Dan, it might have decided the cursor was pointing at Zoom instead of PowerPoint.
Oh.
Try that now.
Okay,
Oh.
there we go. All right. So first I'm going to talk about Goldfield, Nevada, because this is probably not something that's familiar to a number of you. We'll talk about the history of this particular Caboose car, and then about the Nevada Copper Belt Railroad, and then the restoration process, because as you'll see, we started with a pretty rough puppy here. And we are not by any means railroad professionals. I mean, this was, you'll see that we did this with local talent in Goldfield and in Tonopah, and it was really quite extraordinary from that standpoint. Okay, so Goldfield. Aside from the people I introduced, anybody else been to Goldfield? Oh, yay, okay.
What road's it on, Jim?
It's on 95. I'll show you on a map here in a sec. Okay, so Goldfield was the largest city in Nevada in 1910 or so. It was around 15,000 people. It was a huge boom and bust city. And now on a busy day, there's 300 there. It's still the county seat of Esmeralda County, and that's like the main employer, if you will. So why us in Goldfield? It's a long story, but I've had a long-term interest in ghost towns since I was a kid. Visited them with my parents, and then on my own. After we got married, we did circuits of Montana and Utah and Arizona and a lot of ghost towns. And we happened to go through Goldfield in the year 2000 when they were having a land auction. I hadn't had one in years. This was for property that come back for taxes due. So we bought a vacant lot in 2000, and then we built, through another very long circuitous process, we built a home on it in 2007. And then we bought the vacant lot next door to us because our neighbor was kind of coming this way buying lots toward us. We said we better build our little moat here. And so and then we bought an ATV, and we were going to just buy a metal storage building, have the ATV and an ATV trailer stored in there. And our neighbor said, no, you need something with character. And so we bought a miner's cabin in town, and it got moved over to our property. And then we paid, a couple of people. It was a big job to restore it because one wall was like missing. So it was a 1905 miner's cabin. You'll see some pictures of it later. And then, of course, then came the Caboose. All right, so this is Nevada, and Reno, Carson City, Las Vegas, and Goldfield's right there. So this is Tonopah. That's Ely, where the Railroad Museum is. What's the name of it? Nevada Northern. And that's an excellent, I'm sure a lot of you have ridden that, right? Have been to Ely? Yeah. So Ely's bigger than Goldfield, although at one time it was not. And then where this Caboose came from is up here in Yarrington at the Nevada Copper Belt Railroad. The Nevada Copper Belt Railroad ran a very short line. I'll show you that in a few minutes. So this is our estate, if you will, in Goldfield. That's our home. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And then right next to it is what was the vacant lot where we have our miner's cabin and the Caboose as it appears today. And so we have some friends that visited us here in San Diego, had a drone, and so they took a bunch of pictures from the air. So we're on the northern town line here of Goldfield, and as it turned out, across the street from us is the remains of the Tonopah Goldfield Railroad turntable. And so it also turns out that there's a lot of railroad stuff in Goldfield. There were 4 separate lines there, and then as you go to Tonopah to the north, and you go down to Beatty to the south, and there's a lot of railroad grade left that you can drive, hike, whatever. And we put a small plug in for our book. We did a book called Discovering the Ghost Railroads of Central Nevada in 2015. And it's available on Amazon. And if you're interested, some other time later, I can tell you the whole story about the railroads in Central Nevada, because I think it's pretty interesting. But also I can tell you about self-publishing a book with Amazon, which is a whole different gig than getting the 2,000 copies from a local printer. And it was a good gig, by the way. All right, so to the point. So how the heck did the Caboose get to Goldfield? So there's a town about an hour and a half east of Reno called Fernley. It's on Highway 50. And they have a wonderful old museum. Well, they had a wonderful old depot, and there was a museum in there for a number of years, and they had a lot of rolling stock next to it. It closed in 2014. And so a number of people from Goldfield went up there. They were aware there was a lot of rolling stock, because they basically said, get that stuff out of here, or we're going to destroy it in place. And so there were 2 boxcars up there that had run on the Tonopah and Goldfield Railroad, and so one of our friends in town paid to get those transported down. Another guy in town was paid to transport a UP refrigerator car and a signal bridge, which is set up in Goldfield. It's in a huge metal, signal bridge behind their house there. And then another couple paid to move the Caboose. And it was Dom and Lisa Papalardo. And so they, after we got there, they kind of decided they'd rather have money than a Caboose. And so we had considered buying a Caboose back in the late 80s when they went out of service. And our property's just not set up to do it. But it was kind of like a seed in the back of our mind. So we kind of expressed interest, and so there it is. On a snowy, cold day in winter of 2015, and so minus the cupola and very bare. I mean, just a box, basically, on trucks. Not the right trucks, but trucks, so don't worry about it. Actually, they're old, probably Army trucks, because a lot of stuff in Central Nevada came from Hawthorne, because they still have a railroad that runs there. There's a lot of stuff in Hawthorne. So we bought it, and it was moved to our property, and that's a whole nother weird story. Should I tell? So the plan was, so the guy that brought it down had it in a lowboy trailer, and then he was going to get another lowboy trailer and bring it over to our house when it was ready. Well, he couldn't get the trailer, so he actually towed it across town. The ruts were in the road for quite a while. But we weren't there at the time, so number one, we know nothing. And, you know, and number two, it's over time, it's kind of, even on Highway 95 where they cut through, I mean, talk about, you know, everybody said they were just look the other way. Just, yep, even the police, like whatever. Because in Goldfield, yeah, it's one of two counties in the whole country where there's no zoning, among other things. And so that, it gives you an idea of the things that sort of happen in Goldfield. So anyway, it got to our property, and then it was unloaded. And so this Bobby Patterson was the guy who made this happen. He has the equipment to do it. He put ballast down. The track came from our friend John Ekman in town, who's a very well-known historian. And then so he set the track, put the ballast down, and then winched the caboose up onto on the track. And so then it was like, what the heck have we done? So we went up to Lyon County Museum in Yerington, which is a very nice one. And they had a bunch of stuff up there about the Nevada Copper Belt Railroad. And then we went to the Nevada State Railroad Museum, and they had a bunch of stuff. And then we went to the University of Nevada, Reno, to the special collections. What we were trying to find, and we never have found, frankly, was the original purchase document for that car, because it started out as a box car for the Illinois Central Railroad. And we were trying to find, and the Illinois Central people said, I don't think so, but because I was trying to find the piece of paper that actually said when it was transferred and all that. We never did, but I'll show you in a minute, we're pretty sure it was true. And then the Fernley Preservation Society, which was the museum that closed in Fernley, had a web page that was up for a long time, and they had a lot of history about this car on there. So we got a lot of useful information about Nevada Copper Belt. And then Joan found a photo of our caboose online, and then we got a nice copy of it from, okay, I'll get to that in a sec. I guess. All right, so there it is. So this was incredibly helpful. Now there's a sister car to this one in Carson City, that's number 3, but it doesn't look anything like this. It's a different manufacturer. Things are in different positions, the windows, the doors, and all that. And at Carson City, at the museum, they've converted number 3 to be a passenger car. But it's very nice, don't get me wrong. But so anyway, this told us where the lettering was. This told us about the ironwork on the outside, where the cupola was and what shape it was. We could see where it had been, but we didn't realize it had a curved top like that. So, okay. Didn't I get through that? No, okay. So this is the history of the car, as near as we could tell. So it was built in Illinois Central as a boxcar in the 1890s, and I'll show you why we think that's true. That was on the Fernley website. It was acquired by the Nevada Copper Belt Railroad in 1909. Cupola was added then. It ran until 1925. It had a whole bunch of lives after that, including a feed shed. And we knew that was true because when we opened up the ceiling, all kinds of stuff came out. And the cupola was removed at some point, and before we got it, obviously. Came to the Fernley Museum in 2002. All those collections were removed, as I mentioned, in 2014. And then the stuff was brought to Goldfield. So this is what it looked like. We found these 2 pictures when it had been in Fernley. One on the left, it's in cribbing, and the one on the right, it had trucks put under it. So these would have been early 2000s, I guess, and you can see it looks pretty ratty. This logo here, we haven't done that. We've done the lettering. We need to do a little more research on whether we want to do that or not. I haven't seen that logo on anything else for Nevada Copper Belt, but it's a pretty small railroad. Where did the map go? Hold on. There it is. So the Nevada Copper Belt Railroad ran. Have you been to Yerington? Have you been to Yerington up that way? Okay, just the one. So All right, so let's see. So like Reno is, and Virginia City and all that stuff is to the left of the map. This is pretty much where Highway 50 runs today, and there is still a railroad line here in an old town called Wabusca. So the line ran from this mine through Mason and Yarrington to a smelter. That's all it did, 37 miles. But it had this caboose, and it had two cabooses actually, 2 and 3. It had also had it wasn't a McKean car, but it was something like that. So they actually had some passenger service because people lived in all these little towns along here. And Yarrington and Mason still have a population. Okay, so, all right, it's all ours. So first order of business, and my brother-in-law Mark right back there was on top of our caboose, sealing up some giant holes in the ceiling, try to get at least started with weatherproofing a little bit. We eventually replaced the entire roof, and it actually is covered with an elastomeric coating now. And I realize that's probably not quite authentic, but for a place like Goldfield, it's the only thing that really makes sense. And it's been holding up very nicely. We had our caboose warming party in August 2015, and we've had a party every year in August, which is Goldfield Days, which has been a fun thing to do. There's our poocheroo, Lori, who's no longer with us, but she spent a lot of time in Goldfield, whether she wanted to be there or not. Yeah. Okay, so we start thinking about, all right, where was everything? So the hints came from the floor and from the ceiling. So we could see where the dry closet had been, where the stove had been, and actually there was a second hole for the stove, but I don't know why. Of course, they have the sliding doors. We could easily see where the cupola had been because they did a really lousy job of patching it. And of course, the platform. So it's 40 feet long and 8 feet wide. It's a pretty standard thing. But these doors are good size. You'll see pictures of them here in a minute. So, and then, okay, so then we got a couple of other secrets, fortunately, about the color and the date. So this is our neighbor, Ed Franklin, and he got started, this is like how we get going on this thing. Taking the ceiling out and seeing the lowered ceiling and see what we got in there. This is after all the chicken stuff came out. So the first thing we discovered was the original color, and this is probably a pretty familiar color to those of you that are railroads fans. This is common inside cabooses, we've found out. We have visited a lot of cabooses as we were going through this project, trying to figure out what we wanted to do with ours and how we wanted to do it. And then we also got a handwritten chalk date up there on one of the beams that says December 21st, 1909, which would be about the time it would have gone into service. So those were good finds. So then Ed is an incredibly good carpenter, and so he built these curved beams for the cupola and painting and a lot of other stuff. So obviously the hole there where the cupola needed to be mounted. And we just can't say enough about Ed. This is kind of what he did for 2 years, was stabilize this thing. He trued it up. He put the cupola on, stabilized the window, at least got the point where it didn't leak and the windows were sealed and all that. But yeah, the cupola was a really big production. So, yeah, this is our other neighbor, John, up there. So bit by bit it came together, and then when he was done with that, and we had this framework here that we have since filled in and with cabinetry and stuff, and Mark and Jackie and Joan and I worked on that a lot. And as the paint faded away, sure enough, right here, the word central showed up and the letters IS. So we really think this is the smoking gun, that this was the Illinois Central boxcar. And there's some numbers here, but we don't have enough of them to be able to figure it out. And even now that it's been painted, you can still kind of see these letters a little bit. because this is original wood. This is the only part apparently on the whole car that's original wood. But that was a good find. Okay, so the cupola and the sliding doors are done in 2017. The sliding doors, I will tell you, have been a pain in the neck ever since the whole start of this thing, because they have to hang vertically, but the car really isn't quite vertical, or the other way around, the car's vertical and the doors aren't quite, and trying to get them to go through tracks, to meet up, to stay on the track. I mean, we get it done, but I wouldn't say that it's a work of art in that regard, but at least we get it done. So there was time to paint. Our neighbor said, Dick, our good buddy Dick Ruiz said, you've got to get some paint on that thing because the wood's going quick. So we hired our friend, we'll talk about him in a minute, from Tonopah. So he put pink primer on it to start with, and our neighbor Dick took that picture and he sent it to us, and he said, Petticoat Junction in the backyard. So we bought, this is called red gumball, and the color, and it looks red, but it's actually kind of a grayish red as opposed to fire engine red. And we did that because in theory it's not going to fade quite as badly as the fire engine red. We bought it at a paint shop in Bishop, and I think it was Benjamin Moore. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's called red gumball. So that's Billy Sanchez, and he lives in Tonopah, and he's an excellent painter. And I mean, he and his partner spent a lot of time, just the prep work for this, to get all the old crap off of it, and get the wood, and then to replace a bunch of pieces of wood. Not a lot, but a number, and then to get it all done. I mean, it was a lot of work, and he's been back a couple of other times to touch it up. Oops. And then we needed to letter the sides, so from the historic photo we knew where these were, and so another friend of ours in Goldfield named Sign Painter Bob did the lettering on here, and he's done some, you'll see a piece of his work here right at the end in a minute. Okay, so, and then the interior. There's a lot to think about. We had the color, and we were able to we got a couple of big 5-gallon, things of the paint, of the green color at Home Depot, and we just started putting them on, sanding down, putting it on, and all that. We had to decide the layout. We made probably a couple of not so great decisions. Well, one good decision we made was about the steps. So you have kind of either two options. You either put rails to be able to climb up, like metal, rails of some kind, or not rails but steps, or you put it in, you indent so that your feet are pressed in as you're going up. And we had been to a lot of different cabooses, and we decided I'd rather do that than have the metal pieces hanging out in the walkway, as it were. So that was one decision. Another decision we made was what we wanted to do about the closets underneath the cupola, because I think most of them would have opened toward the middle, but then we felt if we did that, the closets would be like this wide and that deep, and we'd rather do it the other way around. So the doors now open on the ends toward the ends of the car. The only problem with that is it's taken away some usable space for desks and other things. So, but we're not going to undo that. It is what it is. So we've done quite a bit of cabinetry and shelving, and most of the doors stay closed. We have to redo a couple of them. Things shifted a little bit. That car has moved some, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The windows and glass, a lot of the windows had to be replaced, and a lot of trued up and all that. A couple of them slide, so there's a couple that go up, and that has had to be accommodated too. And then, as I mentioned about the sliding doors, they work and they're beautiful, but we never know when we go up there what the situation is going to be. So so just working on it. So Mark and I are in the middle there. This is Joan in there, and I'll put in a plug for Joan to say I can't say enough about my wife Joan. She's an incredibly good helper, and if we're doing something and we're gonna there's gonna be like a tool that's needed for the next step, she already has the tool in her hand before I think what it is. So that's very helpful. She's been an amazingly tolerant partner through, not only tolerant but active partner in this whole project. Well, so there it is. And except for a couple of other things we've thrown in there lately, we have a scale in there and a few other things. It's pretty much what that looks like. And so, you know, we're glad to have gotten here, and the whole thing is really stabilized. And we'll talk about the truss rods in a minute. Okay, so Ironwork. So another neighbor, Dick Ruiz, in Goldfield, is an iron guy, retired iron worker. So we were missing a lot of pieces of the ironwork: the railings, the handlebar, or whatever they call the hang-on bars, one of the ladders. A lot of stuff was missing. So he built all that stuff that we needed, or modified it, and then came truss rods. And you guys know what truss rods are. Most people don't, but the car was starting to sag because it was in the middle. It's 40 feet long, and there was nothing underneath it to keep it from that. So we'd put a bunch of 4x4s under it. We said, that's not what we want to do. So we learned about truss rods, and then we got some help from people in the Nevada State Railroad Museum and others. And so Dick said, okay, we'll do this. We'll get them made. And so we just measure. And I mean, we went back and forth several times trying to figure out. I'm sure you guys know more about this than I do, but these things are called queen posts, these right here. And so the trick was to get these long enough so that the angle would come down and allow us to adjust the turnbuckles and all that. And it ended up working. We just barely made it. We should have made them a couple inches longer, but in any case. So yeah, so they got all made, and then so we're installing up there. That's Dick and me and Mark up there in the upper right. Joan's measuring stuff here. So this is one of the finished bars here. There's two in the middle that go straight through, and then two on the end that do the dip, and they all have turnbuckles on them. And that's our buddy Dick. And here we'll see. I can't say enough about Dick Ruiz. He's a retired iron worker. He lives two doors. Ed Franklin lives 2 doors down over this way. He was the carpenter, and Dick Ruiz lives 2 doors down that way. He's a retired iron worker. And I mean, having all of this local talent to do this was just amazing coincidence and fortuitous. I mean, if we'd had to do the majority of the stuff on our own, it would still be sitting there. And then the last 10%. So this gentleman here named Rich Gartman showed up into town about 3 years ago, and we had him do some small tasks for us, and we could see he was really good worker. And so I gave him this list. I said, okay, here's all the stuff that isn't quite done yet. The small windows don't work. They don't go up and down. They need to be painted. There were problems with the sills on the doors in the front and back. The sliding doors were still kind of a pain in the butt. He's got one of them down here right there, plus he's painting it. And the seats for the cupola, we just had a lot of little odds and ends left. So he did them. And so he's been a real godsend too. We just can't say enough about Rich. He's still there, and he's still very active, and he's very clever. We have hired him to do a lot of other things, as have a lot of other people in town. So, like I said, we have a party every year in the Caboose during Goldfield days, and this last 2 times we've had John Malcolm Penn, who is a professional folk singer, perform in the Caboose. Each time this has happened, he's come to Goldfield and performed in the quote-unquote opera house downtown, and then he's come to our Caboose party. And we had Alex Muddy Smith. I think he's another folk singer that came. And we've had other people. These local folks have played. We always have some music. It's fun. So yeah, he lives in Cathedral City or somewhere out that way. He's still very active. They do hayride kind of stuff out in the desert all the time. So what's left? Well, so we don't have any furniture in there yet except for a scale and a few other things. We were thinking about how to do a pull-down desk of some kind, get some maps on the wall. We've got a couple of pictures. And I know we'll have maintenance. I know that over time we're going to have to paint here and there. We've already had some touch-up we need to do. I'm hoping the roof lasts for a while, but the elastomeric coating is pretty straightforward to put on, and it lasts for quite a while. And then what happens? The caboose is in our estate plans, and it will end up presumably as property of either a historical society or a museum somewhere in Nevada. And pretty much gone through, you don't know any of these people except for Mark and a few others I've mentioned, but I also want to just put in a small plug for ourselves at the bottom here, because this has been an interesting program to do this project. And we've put in both, and I will tell you that if we actually totaled up all the bills and stuff, it wasn't that much, because the talent is there locally and they don't cost much. I mean, you do something like this in San Diego, it would cost 10 times what we paid to do this up there. So that was helpful too. Oops. So there it is. As I say, it's about as done as we're gonna do. It's stable. The truss rods hold the thing together. Doesn't leak. The roof's good. Like I said, from here on, it's kind of what we want to do. But it took 8 years to get us to this point, and there was a lot of skilled labor that went into this, and that, of course, made it all the more rewarding. So I would say to you, come visit us in Goldfield sometime and check out the Copper Belt Caboose. And just as a quick tag on the end, Goldfield is now a 2 caboose town. Our good friends Carl and Patty Brownfield own Radio Goldfield, which is on an FM station, but also you can go to kgfn.org and you can listen to Radio Goldfield 24/7. It's bluegrass, light country, it's a really nice radio station. And Carl, they're such sweet people. So they have had the station has been in a studio in a building across the street that they're now losing access to. So I don't know whether we planted the germ with our caboose or not, but Carl ran across the opportunity to get this. So this is a former Colorado and Wyoming caboose that was brought to Goldfield last November, I think. And he hired the crane and the whole enchilada to do this. It was a big deal. Anyway, they just finished it, and sign painter Bob, who did our NCBRR thing, painted the Radio Goldfield on there. I mean, that picture was taken last week. So Radio Goldfield is ready to move in April. So, yeah. So there we are. That's the story of cabooses in Goldfield.